All right, so arteries and veins, going through the arteries and veins. Veins have been injected with a blue latex dye. Arteries have been injected with a red latex dye, just so that you can visualize them and they hold their shape a little bit better. In the thoracic, like in the upper part of the body, the veins are going to lie on top of the arteries, so you'll see them first. And then you'll see when we get to the iliacs near the, at the lower part of the pelvic cavity, abdominopelvic cavity, it reverses and the arteries are on top of the veins. Veins are much easier to see because they're larger, they hold more dye, and that's because if you have learned about the structure difference between arteries and veins, veins have a much larger lumen, they're much larger vessels, so they hold more of the dye and they're much easier to see.
Is that for the pressure gradient?
It's because, remember, after the arteries, so arteries have a lot of pressure and they're pumping the blood through. After the blood gets to the capillaries and it goes into the venules, what happens is they've lost all that pressure. There's not as much blood pressure in the veins. So the veins have to have a larger lumen because the blood somewhat pools, right? Because the blood's not going through the veins as quickly as it's going through the arteries. So the veins have to have a larger lumen because it has to hold more blood because it kind of pools back. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. The upper arteries and veins, I'll start with the veins first because they're completely symmetrical. They're the same on the left as the right. Okay. So first, the ribs have been cut away. This is the heart. And this major blue vessel coming off directly off the top of the heart, this would be the superior vena cava. Superior vena cava. This is what all of the blood from the upper extremities and head is going to drain into the superior vena cava back to the heart, to the right atrium. So this is the superior vena cava. Every time a vessel splits, it becomes something else. Okay, so when a vessel splits off into 2 or 3 or however many, each one is now a new vessel. We have to change the name. So this is the superior vena cava, and then its first initial split is going to be, this is the left brachiocephalic, this is the right brachiocephalic. So on my test, I know some of y'all aren't my students, but on my test, I ask whether it's right, left, if there is a right or left, what's the name of the vessel, and then whether or not it's an artery or vein. So if I were to ask this on the test, you would say it's the left brachiocephalic vein, right? To get full credit, you have to tell me it's the left brachiocephalic vein, okay? All right, so brachiocephalic, because you're gonna have a branch that goes to the what is that? Arm, and you're gonna have a branch cephalic that goes to the head. Fantastic. So here's the brachiocephalic, and then it's going to branch this vessel coming up. And I know it's kind of off to the side, but I'll pull it up. This going to the head, this is the left external jugular vein. Okay? The branch that comes off of it, right here, at the top, this is the transverse scapular. Okay? This is the transverse scapular because it traverses the scapula. It goes to the back. So left brachiocephalic, this first branch going up to the head is the left external jugular. This is the left transverse scapular vein. This branch that goes up and into the arm, this is called the subclavian for the first part. And then you see how there's a branch right here? You don't need to know this branch, but seeing this tells you that it's now another vessel. This is called the axillary now. So after this branch, we no longer call it the subclavian, we call it the axillary. And why is it axillary? What region is it in? Armpit. Axillary pertains to the armpit, and think axillary, axe deodorant, armpit. Okay? So here, this is the axillary. See how it branches off right here? And then, so out here, this is a different vessel. We call it something else. This is called the brachial. And that makes sense because it's up in the brachial region of the body. Okay? So we have, I'll do this, and it's completely symmetrical, so it's the same on the right side. Okay, I'm not going to go through the right side too because it's symmetrical. This is the superior vena cava, left brachiocephalic vein. This is the left external jugular, left transverse scapular, left subclavian, branches, now it's the left axillary, branches, now it's the left brachial vein. Okay? Does that make sense?
So
okay.
On the axillary goes this way or this way?
The The axillary, it just follows. So this is the subclavian until it branches. Now this is the axillary until it branches, and now it's the brachial. Okay? All right? Okay. And it's the same on the right side too.
Well, what is this right here?
This you don't need to know.
Okay.
Don't worry about this one. We didn't talk about
Okay.
that one. Okay? All right. So the arteries, they're not as nicely dyed as the veins are, but they have a pinkish hue to them. So coming directly off the top of the heart, does everyone see this structure that kind of wraps down and around? This is the aortic arch. So the aorta comes off the top of the heart and wraps and goes down and around to the back of the heart. So this structure right here is the aortic arch. Everything branches off of the aortic arch. This vessel right here is the brachiocephalic. So the arteries are not symmetrical like the veins are. And this is the first, like this, remember in the veins, there was a left and right brachiocephalic. In the arteries, there's only one. This is the brachiocephalic artery. Okay. So on the test, you wouldn't have to tell me right or left. You would just tell me brachiocephalic artery. Okay, so this is the brachiocephalic. This vessel coming off the leftmost side of the heart, this is the left subclavian. So the left subclavian artery comes directly off of the aortic arch. That's different from the veins. Remember, the left subclavian vein comes off of the left brachiocephalic. So they're not completely symmetrical like the veins are. This is our left subclavian. So it's much longer than the left subclavian vein because it comes directly off the top of the heart. Left subclavian, if you follow it up and around, it does the same exact thing. So left subclavian comes up, wraps around, see where it branches? It's now the left axillary artery. Then it branches again, and it's now the left brachial artery. So it follows the same trend as the vein.
So they have it on the right side as well?
But the difference is the right subclavian artery branches off of the brachiocephalic. So here's our brachiocephalic, and if you kind of pull this vein away, what you'll see is, does everyone see it looks like a little three-toed bird's foot? There's 1, 2, 3 vessels that branch off of the brachiocephalic artery. This is the left common carotid. So follow it all the way up. See, it is parallel with the trachea. This is the left common carotid artery. This middle branch of the brachiocephalic right here, this is the right common carotid artery. You follow it up all the way to here. This is the right common carotid artery. Okay? The rightmost branch of the brachiocephalic, this is the right subclavian. Right subclavian, it's underneath the vein, so follow it all the way up, it does the same thing. After this branch, it's now the right axillary, and then once it gets up into the arm, it's the right brachial, okay? And for me, for my test, I will make sure, like, you can tell, is it in the armpit, is it up into the arm, or is it like right near the more midline, more medial,
Okay,
so that you can tell.
Everything branches off of the brachiocephalic artery except the left subclavian artery.
Yeah.
Which comes directly from the
Yeah,
aortic
the left
arch.
subclavian artery comes directly off of the aortic arch. Then you have your brachiocephalic, and then from the brachiocephalic, you'll have your left common carotid, your right common carotid, and your right subclavian.
Okay.
Okay? Behind the heart, you see that big, I can't really see the aorta, but right here, this is the inferior vena cava coming from the bottom, right? This is the inferior vena cava, and if you were to tease away and be able to see the artery, that would be called the aorta. So remember, the aortic arch comes and wraps around and goes behind the heart. As it goes behind the heart, it's called the thoracic aorta. Once it goes through the diaphragm and into the abdominal cavity, it's called the abdominal aorta, okay? So to show you all the arteries and veins of the abdominopelvic cavity that you need to know, I have to pull all the intestines and stomach kind of to the side, okay? And does everyone see like the big main vessels that run parallel with the spine? We have this big blue one and we have this red one, right? Runs parallel with where the spine would be. This is the inferior vena cava, and this is the abdominal aorta. Okay? Inferior vena cava, abdominal aorta. Everything branches off of them. Okay? Everything branches off of those two main vessels. Up at the top, you'll see this this artery, this one, and this one, right? Does everyone see those three? All branching off directly off of the abdominal aorta. Easy way to learn these three vessels is CSI. C for celiac trunk. This is the artery that supplies the stomach with oxygenated blood. Superior mesenteric, look where it's going. Small intestines. Superior mesenteric brings oxygenated blood to the small intestines. And then look right here, where's this vessel going? Large intestine. This is the inferior mesenteric. It supplies oxygenated blood to the large intestine. Okay? So CSI. Celiac trunk going to the stomach, superior mesenteric going to the small intestines, inferior mesenteric going to the large intestines. Okay? What I did was I took the large intestine and I cut it away deep inside so that we could see all of these arteries and veins down here, right? So that's why this is detached. But normally it would be down in there, okay? But I detached it so we could see all of this stuff. All right, next vessels I want to point out are these. So this huge blue vessel going to, what is this organ right here? Kidney, fantastic. This would be the left renal vein. Below it, this would be the left renal artery, okay? Left renal vein, left renal artery. The vein is taking deoxygenated blood away from the kidneys, back to the inferior vena cava. The renal vein is bringing oxygenated blood from the abdominal aorta to the kidneys, okay? This right here, it's really hard to see the artery below it because I didn't tease it away very well, but this blue vein coming from this structure right here, what do you think this is?
Is that the pancreas?
Adrenal gland. Yeah, so the adrenal gland is real grainy and it just looks like a bunch of crap on top of the kidney. But this right here is the adrenal gland, and this vessel right here is the adrenolumbar vein. And there is an artery too, you just can't see it very well. But this would be the adrenolumbar vein, coming from the adrenal gland back to the inferior vena cava. Here, so if we switch sides, you'll be able to see this is the right renal vein. And below it, if you see the right renal artery, okay? Okay? All right. What else? So now we need to go down and do all of these down at the bottom. Okay. So can everyone see that the abdominal aorta comes down and kind of switches and goes on top of the veins? But can everyone see that it branches off into these V's? Like these V's? Okay. So these are all the iliacs. Iliac, because what else has the term iliac?
Iliac region.
Iliac region, yes. And why is the iliac region named iliac?
Because you have the pelvic bone.
The pelvic bone has the ilium. Remember ilium, ischium, pubis? See, that's why you can't forget stuff in anatomy and physiology, because everything, you know. So it's named that way because of the part of the os cox they called the ilium, and it's in that region. Okay, so our abdominal aorta comes down, and it's going to, does everyone see that there's an outer V and an inner V? Okay, the outer V, these are the external iliac arteries. So this would be the left external iliac artery. This would be the right external iliac artery. Okay, so the outer V are the external iliacs. Left external, right external. When you travel down, when the external iliac enters into the leg, it's now called the femoral because it's going to split off. See how it splits right here? This is now called the femoral. So this would be the left femoral artery. Everything in the leg region is going to branch off of that femoral artery. That's why it's really important. And if you sever it, like you lose a whole lot of blood, because look how close it is to the abdominal aorta. It's one of the major branches off of the abdominal aorta. Okay, so it's an important vessel. This would be the left femoral artery. All right, does everyone see that this inner V has this little connector piece? This little bitty connector piece is called the internal iliac artery. The internal iliac artery then splits off into the left and right internal iliac arteries, okay? So the connector piece is the internal iliac artery, then you have the left and right internal iliac artery, okay? Does everyone see this artery that comes and branches off the middle of the internal iliacs? This one that goes like down, and it goes kind of down and back. That's the caudal artery. It's going to the tail. That's why it's going back. So this is the caudal artery. It supplies the tail with blood.
So we don't have that.
We have one. It's just not called caudal because it doesn't go to our tail. It's called the median sacral artery in humans.